Okay, I've got a swarm, and it's the first swarm of the year. And the reason is because it's been very rainy and cloudy for the last few days, and swarms will wait until the sun comes out to set up. And a swarm is simply the way that a beehive makes itself into another beehive. It doubles or triples, and there's usually a lot of baby queens in a swarm, and some of them go back and fight it out with the old queen, and sometimes the old queen flies out and leaves the young queens. It depends on what's going on. Anyway, my first swarm of this year, and just a few minutes ago, before I went home, got the camera, these beehives were just loading with bees going home. The reason for that is because they were out foraging and there was a storm coming any minute. And right before it rains, the bees all fly home. Bees don't fly at night, and they don't fly when it rains. They're homebodies and they like good weather. Okay. That's the way that is. I'll show you. Anyway, they've been cooped up for quite a few days, but they've calmed down now because it's evening. Okay, and here's what I've done. I'm never in a rush when it comes to catching a swarm, because the swarm, contrary to what you were reading by somebody who started the rumor, bees do not, the queen does not fly miles and miles away to some magical spot, some place where all the boy bees, the drones, fly around in circles waiting for queens to show up. They don't do that. The real truth is, the instant that a queen, princess actually, flies out of the hive, she is immediately chased down by drones. And right above the hives, you can watch them breeding. And that's because nature allows the drones, the boy bees, to go from hive to hive. They don't have a stinger, they don't forage on their own, they rely on other beehives to feed them. So they have to go into the beehive and sip honey. So while they're traveling, they go into another beehive. And I see all types of drones going into different hives. There's two major types of drones. One is a small black drone, which is mostly what I have. And then there's these big yellow drones, which my neighbors have, and they fly in sometimes, but I don't have the yellow drones here. I did a long time ago in another place, but not now. Anyway, this is the swarm, and a swarm is always gentle, and I've lived in South Texas, and I've lived places like Arizona where they have lots of dry climate, and the bees can set up outside pretty well. Anyway, all swarms are exactly the same if they're made from the Apis mellifera honeybee. They're all gentle when they're swarming, as you can see. They're just buzzing because I blew on them, but they're not aggressive. And you can make them aggressive if you work bees without smoke or something, but there is no such thing as Africanized killer bees. They started telling me that lie in 1972 when they made the horror shows, but it's all fiction. It's a lie. Anyway, here's how you get a swarm. You put your hive down here. Give them an empty comb would be great. I have an empty comb here, and I actually have two in here. And hopefully you'll get the queen. We want to get these sticks out of the way so the queen can fall. Get these sticks out of the way. Oh, so we don't want to fall yet. I'm just going to go ahead and shake it right in there. Here we go. You grab it as high as you can and give it a bunch of vigorous shakes. Keep shaking because you want to make sure you still have the queen on there. And you see, nobody's stinging me. I got one little stinger. See how they're kind of aggressive right now. So I'll step back, but they're going to go in there and settle inside the box. And if I start seeing them settling up here again, it means the queen's flown back up there. But if the queen goes down into that box, everything's going to be fine. I'm just going to leave that alone and get out of here for a little while. Let them settle in. And if I see, like I said, if I see anybody clustering up here, I know the queen is flown up. They're going to follow the queen around, and they're going to look for her. Some people say you can ring a bell right about now, and apparently a bee hears, so to speak, through its legs. It's kind of a piston thing, and when you ring a bell, supposedly they can't hear the queen where she is, so they'll sort of stay down there low. And I don't really know how it works, but a lot of people that I know still swear by ringing a bell. Well, I know at least 2 people who do. Anyway, queen could be on the ground down there. I don't really know for sure, but it's good to look for her. Sometimes there'll be 5 or 6, maybe more, queens in one swarm. And if you have some queen cages on hand, which I do, try to take a look for the spare queens, because the more you catch, the more bee hives you can make from them. And why I'm not in a hurry is because right now all the queens are mating. They're mating in this swarm. That's what they do. The princesses fly out of the hive and they start mating up above. And then as they settle down and rest, these little boy bees, this is a boy bee, the drone, they mate with them and then they follow them around. See the drones follow the swarms around too. Right now, there's another drone. Drones are the biggest of the bees, and then there's the queen. I knew there was a swarm here because the swarm makes a very loud noise because of all the drones that are in the swarm. Drones are very loud when they fly. Might be one reason why they have that name drone, because there's a droning sound. And a swarm has a lot of drones circling it. Now you see how they're kind of marching around and circling? That's because they got the message, the queen's inside here. So everything's going to be okay. Now I'm not in a rush to put the lid on. The lid's still here. I'm going to let them keep on coming in. I don't want to smash any bees and I don't see any reason for it. But as you can see right here, that's clustering. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to shake it again. Hopefully I got the queen again, just to make sure the queen falls in there. Still you can see those drones. That's a drone that you're seeing walking around there. You can hear that noise. But a swarm is a mating thing. That's what it is. It's the queen's mating, or the princess's mating. I have actually pulled 12 queens out of one swarm because I was paying particular attention to it, because it was my girlfriend's first beehive and it had reproduced, and we made 3 beehives off that one swarm. But I was trying to help her out as much as I could. She doesn't need my help anymore. She's got her own bees. So we'll let that run around, and I don't see them clustering too much over here. It's just the smell probably of where the queen was. They're really not after it, and I don't see her. Pretty sure she fell right in, or however many there are. Eventually you may see one queen or so falling out of the hive. Never worry, that's one that they're chasing out. There'll only be one generally in the hive. Sometimes I've seen them keep 2, but not more than that. The reason I know is because I'll mark them, and you wouldn't know otherwise, because a newly mated queen might stick around a while. I've seen 2 double marked queens, 2 marked queens in one hive. See how they're all coming in? You can probably see they're coming in now. So it looks like everything's working out really good. And pretty soon, I still continue, if I can, continue to shake that off over and over, because I want to make sure that they go into that hive. Anyway, that's the fun of beekeeping, catching a swarm. But anyway, that's the first swarm we got this year. There'll probably be a lot more. I used to have a lot more beehives than this on this area. But a couple of years ago, my neighbor went spray crazy, and he just kept spraying 2 times a week and kept killing my bees. I'm lucky I have any bees left, but almost every box is filled up there. Almost every box. except the big tall ones you see back there. Those are just storage boxes, which I need to put on the hives pretty quickly. But anyway, it was good that I went out here and checked this. I didn't really check this. I just, like I said, I heard the noise, so I came out. Okay, that's all. I don't have anything else to tell you. Oh yeah, I do. As soon as they settle in a little bit and I start seeing them go down into the box, then I'll put the lid on and I will carry it back over there and set it on that rack. You can't move an ordinary beehive, regular beehive, because they go right back to where they were. The foragers fly out and they always return to where they were. The only way you can move one is if you put another hive in its place that's weak, and then the foragers will actually go back into that hive and strengthen it. And you can, when you got a row like this, you can do that, because where you took the weak hive, you can move another hive to catch its foragers. But when you move a beehive, the foragers always go back to where they came from, unless you move it about 3 miles away. Then they'll stay there. I know, because I've done it for many decades, and I've seen, no matter what they say, you can't move a beehive. They just don't know how to find their way back unless you go 3 miles. So they say 3 feet, anywhere up to 3 feet is fine. You can move it 3 feet or 3 miles. No more than 3 feet and no less than 3 miles, you'll have success. The beehives can be moved 3 feet in either direction. They'll find their way back. Because in nature, like with a big tall tree, the tree will fall over and will have a hive in it. They'll be able to find their way back to that branch sometimes. Forget that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry about that. All I know is what I say. So much for the beehive in the tree. I don't really know. But I just know that when I move a beehive, if I move it 3 feet, they seem to be able to find their way into it. So if you're going to move a beehive like from one end to that end, you're going to have to move it like 1 foot a day to maybe 2 foot a day, and at most 3 foot a day. Just keep moving it every 24 hours. Get up and move it another foot. Slowly inch your way or foot your way to where you want the beehive to be. Because if you just take it from that end and set it over there, you'll have a pile of bees, foragers with nice pollen on their legs, just dying over there, sitting and waiting with no queen, perishing. Of course you could, and this would work really well, take a queen out of one of your existing hives. They'll make another queen, but they won't produce well if you take the queen out. But you can do this. You can take a queen out of your other hives, put it in a cage, put it in a new box, and set it where you took the other hive from. The foragers will come back and they will accept that queen in that cage, and then after about 3 days, open up the cage and let her out, and you'll have yourself a new hive with those foragers. That works. Anyway, you can always figure all kinds of neat things to do with bees. Lots of fun things. Anyway, see how they're really settling down now? They're starting to go in. They will eventually be all the way in there, and then I can put the lid on. And there we go again. There's a tiny little bit of bees again. I'm going to go ahead and just shake that. There we go. And I don't see a queen falling in, so I know there was not a queen up there. That's good. She's inside the box for sure. So I'll be moving it. When you got a swarm, you can move the box. Swarms are easy to move around. They seem to be able to orient anywhere you want to put them. So right now, if I take this beehive and I set it way over there, they'll still find their way to it. And if they don't, they'll fly right back home to the hive they came from today. See, that's the thing about that. They'll fly home. And actually, if I kill the queen, they'll fly home to their hive. That's how that works. Anyway, you see there's lots of drones in a swarm, and that drone right there means that it was looking for a princess queen. And you can take a bunch of drones and you can mark them and watch them, and they'll go from hive to hive to hive to hive. Now, if you do this in the fall or during a very bad time of the year when there's no nectar, they'll push the drone back out of the hive and they won't accept them. But they won't accept even their own drones at that time of the year. But I've done that, and I've watched them. Drones can drift anywhere they want. They don't have congregation areas. But swarms can fly quite a bit of distance. I think they call them, I don't know, but I've seen swarms pass me up and just fly right on by. So they can fly a long ways. I think a swarm can fly 20 miles, somebody said, but I don't know if that's true or not either. It's all hearsay. What you see in the books, a lot of that's been proven wrong. One of them for sure, though, is drone congregation areas, and the other one is Africanized bees, killer bees. They don't exist. These bees will stay right here as long as the queen is there. And if you start seeing them get all shifty, where the bees start looking, kind of moving this way and that way like this, shaking back and forth, they're leaving. The queen left. And then they'll fly off the new swarm box. As long as they're calm like this, they'll stay. And there's a whole lot less bees now on that little catch where they were. Everything's gonna be all right. We got us another little hive. I like the darker bees, and there used to be a black bee called Apis mellifera mellifera. It's got a lot of names: German black, Irish black. They used to call it the Native American bee because it was here when we first came. The whites first came. They saw the black bees, and they didn't really like them. They said, "Oh, they're not thrifty, they're too aggressive." And all the old bee books kept talking about how they couldn't wait to import the yellow bee from Italy. And there was a couple of very famous businessmen with bees who got together with their money in 1857, and they imported the yellower bees. And so now our bees, you see they're all mixed up. There's some black in there. There's a like a dark black one. There's a yellow one, and we've got all. See, there's a black one. We got all races. Where's my finger? Oh, okay. You see the black one? Oh, where did it go? There it is. Man, I'm just no good with this camera. Is that a black bee? Yeah. But see that there's no more of the jet black solid bees all over America. There used to be in the woods black bees. Even in the 90s, before the varroa mite came here in the 90s, there were black bees in the woods. You could open up a tree and they'd all be black. There wouldn't be any of these yellow bees. And nobody wanted them because they claimed they were very aggressive. And everybody was saying the Italian is the best. And that came ever since 1857 when they imported those Italian bees. But see, you'll see some black ones. There's a black one. But they won't form their own hive anymore. I haven't seen that. It's hard to make that happen unnaturally. You have to squish the queens that are yellow in your boxes and let them keep making only the black queens. And every time you see a yellow queen, you have to squish them. And you have to be in an isolated area. And then you can unnaturally make them, but nobody's doing that anymore. You try to find yourself some black bees, go ahead, and you won't find them. There's no catalogs that'll sell them to you. You just can't buy black bees anymore. You don't find them. You'll hear people say, "Oh, I've got black bees." Well, give me a picture of them. They don't. The only picture I've seen are from like the 90s. There's one or two. I think there's one on bush bees, and he shows it all the time. But you can't buy them anymore because they really have gone extinct. There's a few places where they still survive, but they're trying so hard to keep them going. One of them is off the coast of the UK. There's an island there where they keep some black bees. And that's because they don't have any of these Italians around, or they would quickly get crossed out like these have. But my place used to be all black bees. It's all black bees. Now it's all mutts. And all bees are mutts. Whatever they tell you, there's no more pure bees. They're these mutts. Look at any beehive and you're going to see a mixture of a hodgepodge of different colors. Like there's what you would call a Caucasian, because he's a gray striped bee. And then there's your Italian. And then there's which is Apis linguistica. And then you're going to find your black bee, Apis mellifera. I've already showed you some of them. They're in there. But you're not going to find any more full bloods. When I was a kid, you could buy any color bee that you wanted, and it would really be something else. You could get an all black hive. I think they were called Midnighters, and you could get black bees, German blacks. You could get complete gray bees, gray Caucasians, and you can get gold and yellow Italians. You could get Italians with only 5 stripes, Italians with 3 stripes. They had them all down to some serious breeding because we didn't have to worry about mites. Bees didn't die. There weren't any pesticides that killed bees outright. The pesticides didn't last very long. They're just totally not biodegradable now. They stay in the system, and they're really making the bees weak. And then we got this mite, and everybody's using the pesticides. And I'm pretty sure these herbicides, which are also not biodegradable, are doing something to weaken the immune system of bees, because I've noticed the bees don't do well with the herbicides around. They don't do well at all anywhere. And there's no regulation on that. People can just buy them and mix them up all they want to, and nobody ever gets in any trouble. So you don't have the ability to just play around with genetics anymore. You can't just start breeding for a yellow bee or breeding for a 3-striped or a 5-striped bee or a black bee or a gray bee. You've got to literally just keep them alive and keep them producing, and that's about all you can do. And the story about, oh, the Russian bees, this and that, they've changed that Russian story. It was so changed. I was one of the first ones that was interested in the Russian bees because they're supposed to be mite resistant. And I got the Yugoslavian ones. They were calling them Russian when they first came out, saying they went all the way to Yugoslavia when Russia was taking over it and rescued some bees that were kept in skeps that seemed to be mite resistant. They weren't. You don't even find Yugo bees anymore. They were a beautiful gray Caucasian bee. They're gone. Can't get them. Mine died. And then came the new Russian bee, which they now claim, oh, we sold the Yugo thing. It was a failure, to another guy, and now he's got Russian bees. Well, you go check him out, and his bees aren't isolated, and they're yellow. They're Italian looking. They're Italians. So I got those two, and I didn't notice any difference between them and the rest of my bees. I bought them 3 times. But bees are bees. They're all good. There's nothing wrong with any of them. And even in Brazil, they're doing really well with their bees, and they work them just like I do. And oh man, I just really wish that I could get one of the smokers like they have in Brazil. You got these big, nice smokers that don't go out. They last for a long time. Also wish somebody would invent a smoker that instantly lights when you pull the trigger, like with a battery or something. Well, looks to me like I can just take the bee brush and go ahead and move these bees pretty quick. They're doing pretty well. I really rambled. Sorry about that. I'm going to just get off of here. Well, maybe I'll show you what I do. I'm just going to go ahead and put the lid on them. We'll start using the entrance. There we go. Put this off of here. Put this off of here. I'm holding this phone, and I'm probably not doing a very good job of videoing. Anyway, I get all the leaves off if I can. It's kind of a problem for them. You know, I actually have an inner cover I could use. I'll go ahead and go get my inner cover. And if you're a new beekeeper, bee suits used to be $150 or more, and that was in the old days. So if you can get yourself a bee suit now, it'd be like $30, $40 or something like that, or less, somewhere around there. You could get a good bee suit, and you don't have to worry about getting stung. And if you get a bee suit, don't get the kind with a hat. Get the kind with a hood. They are much better. You can't see above you when you put the hat on. I learned that the hard way. I like an inner cover because I just think they do better that way. I'm not going to use a bee brush. I'm just going to slide them gently. Hopefully that'll work fine. Sliding them over there. There's that. Okay, I got that. Now you're going to start noticing they're going to start using the entrance. You start using the entrance. Okay, girls. I always call them girls. There's, I don't know, there's drones in there too, but I call them girls. Alright, I don't need that. Now watch the... Now there's a queen right there. Oh, she flew out, but she was definitely not mated very well. I just saw a queen. She knows where she came from. So see, that was one queen. I watched her leave. See here. Now they're learning where the entrance is. See, they're not foraging, so they're not going to get lost. I can move them. When they start foraging, the foragers are what gets lost. They're so intent on their work and remembering where each flower, each nectar source was, or water source was, or pollen source was, that they can't imagine that their home could be moved. And so when you move their home, it totally throws them away. Literally. Well, they're sure going in good. You don't see them going out very much. A lot of times the beehive will literally be emptying out while you put a new swarm in there. And you'll notice bees are still going in, and when you finally lift the box up, there'll be nobody in there. Except a couple. So they can be pretty sneaky. Anyway, I'm going to let them sit there for a long time. Let them get used to that. Since it's in my own bee yard. If I was doing this for somebody else and they had a bunch of swarm in their yard or something, I would try to get in and get out pretty quick. But because if you leave right now, the bees that are here, since they don't have a queen and you took the queen, if you did, now they're going to go home. It's just how it is. So the person wouldn't be angry because the bees would go home unless you left the swarm there. The stragglers usually go home without the queen, unless they've been sitting there for a few days. They really look like they're coming in now. It's probably boring everybody, but I could sit here all day long. This is fun. We had a little sunshine today, and that's what inspired the swarm to come out. Now it's cloudy again. So you can tell these bees are shifting back and forth. They're nervous. There's no queen there. They're jittery. They're looking around. There's nobody there. If the queen was there, they'd be calmly lighting onto it. Didn't take them long to find that entrance. And this is a screen bottom board. I love screen bottom boards because I can try out different organic treatments and see if they work for mites, because I can see the mites fall. Different essential oils. I can see when the pollen's coming in really good without opening up the hive, because it'll start falling through the wire, some of it. And of course I can see if the hive's healthy or not. There's still a lot of drones flying in. It could mean that the virgin queens are still mating. Well, I see one little bee that, when you look at the tail like that, that's called the Nazanoff, and it's throwing out a scent. She's throwing out a scent, and it says, "Queen's here. This is where we're living. Queen's here. Come to this. This is the hive." And she's fanning it through the air, and it smells like lemons or citrus or citronella. It actually smells like citronella more than anything. And that's why some people use lemongrass, essential oil, or lemon balm or anything else that has a citrusy smell, to try to attract bees to a box when they're swarming, because it smells like that little bee does right there. And she's saying, the queen's here. They'll often do that when the queen's not in there, because she's been there. It's really, nothing's too sure. They're really starting to come in good. Yeah, probably gonna move it pretty quick. Where should I put it? I'm trying to keep everything off to this side and keep them from down there, moving them off this way. And so I'll probably put it on the very end. And I like to keep a lot of low trees. As you can see, I prune that one down because I like to catch swarms easy to reach. We got a couple of apple trees right in front where they're kind of in the way, but they'll catch swarms. And I got to get rid of this great big tree because it's leaning towards the hives. And I don't know how many swarms I've lost to the forest due to that gigantic tree. And like I said before, as far as shade goes, the only thing wrong with shade, there's only one thing wrong. It's hard to see the eggs in the cells when it's always dark. You need to get your back to the sun and let the sun's rays shine into the comb so you can see the little egg. And in the shade, you can't do that so well. And that's all. But as far as hive beetles go, believe me, that makes no difference whatsoever. You're going to have hive beetles in the sun. You're going to have hive beetles in the shade. You're going to have wax moths in the sun and in the shade. They're scavengers. If your hive is sick, if your hive is weak, or if you've got some dead hives around that are breeding them, you're going to have that. You're going to get that. So, that's how it is. You should just keep your bees where you can. And yeah, I think it'd be good to put them in sun so you can see the combs really well. But in some places it's really, really hot. They sure do like it when they got some shade. And bees choose a shady place. I've put out a lot of swarm boxes. Bees prefer themselves to make a home in a shady place. They like to get under the canopy in a tree and get in a hole and be in the dark. They don't like to set up in the full sun. They prefer shade. And in the full sun, when it gets to be over 90, sometimes the comb on a real tall hive can melt at the top. I've had it happen. And the shade doesn't allow that to happen. But full sun, you can get comb collapsing from the melt. If the hive isn't strong enough to fan it cool, it'll melt. I'm gonna go ahead and move this hive. I think the queen's staying there. The stragglers are no longer alighting on that branch worth worrying about, so I'm taking it. And another thing, if you see pollen on any of the bees in the swarm coming to the swarm, it means that the swarm's been there for a long time and they're already foraging that spot. So that means leave the swarm in that place until dark before you move it, because there's foragers. But if the hive doesn't have any pollen on it, on the swarm, none of the bees have pollen on their legs, and means they're not foraging yet. You can move it as soon as you get a chance. You see these bees, they're looking around for that swarm. They don't see it. And they'll go back to their hive. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to look and see how they're orienting to this new box. That's orientation. checking it out. Going in, going out, looking at where they live. All around the box, making sure they know where they're at. It's pretty neat how they do this. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this one up. They need to have some privacy. So they'll be going in on that side. And I'll be taking this off the bottom later. But because it's on a screen bottom board, I don't want to confuse them at all about where the entrance to the hive is. So that's what I'm trying to do. We'll not know anything until tomorrow. Sometimes they'll just decide to go back to the hive, the whole mess will. And they'll fight it out with the old queen. See who wins. But we'll see what happens. Well, all I see now are mostly drones flying here, smelling where the Virgin Queen was and trying to find her. Now she's gone. Never no more. They'll just go back home to the hives they came from. There's a black drone. There's a lot of little workers, but not very many, maybe 25. We pretty much got it. Pretty much got it. You can hear the drones. Lots of drones smelling where the Virgin Queens were. So let's go see if they've located the new place, which they have because they're really good at orienting. Yep, there they are. See that? They've located their new spot, and they're going in, flying in, checking everybody out. They're setting up house, and it's going to be successful. There's somebody beating up another that doesn't belong there. Get out of here! You don't belong here. See that? Go on! You're a robber. There they are. They're starting to fight for their home. They're defending their home. So everything is good. That'll all calm down soon once the swarm is settled. Then they can release the honey that they have, the nectar, into the, not honey, but they can release the nectar. Oh yeah, they might have honey. They drink honey before they swarm. But they'll release whatever they have in those cells and start building comb really fast. They can really, really build some comb when they're swarming. In about 3 days, this box will be filled with comb in a good flow like this. We're having a good flow because the flows are all dependent on cool weather and rain. Hot weather, weather above the 80s doesn't seem to make much honey for me. When it gets in the 90s, even if it rains around here, there just isn't any honey. They just don't get any nectar out of the flowers because the flowers are wilting too much. Well, that's how you take a swarm and hive it. Pretty simple. And I got one sting on my finger because I crushed a poor little bee. But they're very docile. You know, I've done every type of honeybee there is. Of course, there really is only one type of honeybee, Apis mellifera. All the rest are just different colors. They all act the same. They all swarm, they all make wax, they all propolize. They're all aggressive at the wrong times. They can all be gentle. They're just Apis mellifera. And I can make any beehive aggressive, and I can make any beehive gentle. There's a reason for everything. An aggressive beehive means something's wrong with the queen. That's simple. that simple. When a beehive is being robbed out a whole lot because something's wrong with its queen and all of its foragers are older, they are past being guards, they're all ready to sting, or when there's no nectar and a beehive has nothing better to do and it's got a bunch of old foragers around and the queen hasn't been laying any young bees that don't sting, there's just nothing but a hive full of stingers. The bees don't sting when they're first spawned. The bees don't when they're first hatched from their, well, what do you call it? When they first emerge from their cocoon, they're not stinging for a few days. They have to learn and grow into it and become guards. Then they start stinging. You can just read books. I don't need to be telling you all this stuff. Anyway, everything is really gentle today. They're really calm because the conditions are perfect. It's almost dark. Everything's going great. I'm happy that I caught that swarm. Some old timers will tell you that the swarms are going to be low some years and high other years. Well, the beekeepers that I'm in touch with all say that this year the beehives are making low swarms. And I noticed that. My swarm was only a few feet tall. We'll see though. We'll see how it works. But right now, they're low. I wonder if any of you can tell me or chime in